Trigger warning. In this episode, we discuss sensitive topics including child sexual assault, domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and other sensitive topics.
Alrighty. Hello and welcome to Sorry for Trauma Dumping. I am your host, Alex, and today I'm joined with a special guest. I'm joined with Jess. Jess, do you want to go ahead and share a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for having me on. Yes, my name is Jess. I use they, them pronouns. I work with an organization called Conflict Artistry. We provide restorative justice, which is an option for healing and justice for survivors of any type of harm that takes place outside of the legal system. I'm really excited to be here. I love spaces like these. There's this book called Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. It's about trauma, and he shares that trauma is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside in the absence of an empathetic witness. And I think it's so powerful when we can come together and validate and support survivors' voices and listen to their stories and tell them that we believe them and we're here for them. And I'm really curious on your end, like what inspired you to start this podcast, and what inspires you to do what you do?
That is such an awesome question. Thank you so much for asking. So I started this podcast originally just to share my story. I had dealt with a lot of trauma in my past, having to do with child sexual assault and witnessing domestic violence and drug use, and then other things, being no contact with my own family, and just other things that kind of snowballed. I have daddy issues. I don't know if you watched that episode in the past. So I had a whole big drama with like who my dad was and finding who my dad was. I was kidnapped. Like I was just like I had so much to my story, and people would be like, "Oh my gosh, you should write a book." And I was like, "Well, I'm not good at that, but I would love to like talk about my story." And then while sharing my own stuff, I was like, I feel other people would really benefit from sharing their story as well. I don't want everything just to be about me all the time. Yes, I love to be able to pop in and be like, oh, yes, that happened to me too. And just listening to other people's stuff too, being like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I have also been through that. And just having that realization that so many people experience trauma in their life. And I knew for a large portion of my life, I kept it inside and I didn't share it. I felt like I always had to be like the family secret keeper, and I could never be my true, authentic self. And it wasn't until finally coming on and having a platform and sharing everything that has happened and what has made me me to make my life feel more complete. I feel like I am a way better person than I was even 2 years ago when I started this podcast. That it has kind of like alleviated some of the past trauma I've had, and it's had me stand up for myself more. I've always considered myself a bit of a human doormat, where I have let people walk all over me and just, kind of get away with doing stuff. And it's like, it's okay. It happens. But this has kind of made me think more, no, I should stand up for myself. I like to tell people I'm in my villain era. I'm in the part where right now where I'm like, I'm doing me. And if you don't like that, that's your fault. Like, I am not going to cater to other people anymore, and I'm going to speak my truth. And it's not doing anyone any justice for keeping my truth inside and not sharing what has been happened to me, and to make changes so people don't make those same mistakes of keeping those secrets and keeping those the hurt inside, and like letting it out, like, yes, this did happen to me, but I'm more than my trauma.
That really resonates with me. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I haven't had anyone ask me that, so honestly, that makes me really happy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think when I think about like people pleasing, I think that's like a something that happens with people who've gone through trauma a lot.
Yes.
Like we become caretakers and these empaths where we feel responsible for taking care of others or their feelings. And I'm like going through this phase in my own life right now where I'm realizing like when I'm people pleasing or when I'm caretaking, I'm not actually a safe person to be around. You can't trust that my yes is yes or my no is no because I don't know my own boundaries.
Yes.
And so I'm really like leaning into what are my boundaries, what are my needs, and how can I express those in a way that will be validated? And if they aren't validated, how am I going to stick up for myself? And so I just appreciate you sharing openly like what's going on with you. And I also loved what you said about villain era. I don't know if you know this, but we're in what's today, the 4th of September. We're in eclipse season right now.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so the cardinal signs, I'm a Cancer, and we're apparently going through our villain era until November 19th. And that feels like a perfect segue for me into what I wanted to share by being on your podcast. So I'll start a little bit in the past. I was raised in a fundamentalist type Christian church, and when I was 19, I believe I was sent to this Christian cult in Montana. It's since been shut down, but while I was there, they had actually then referred me to a Christian treatment center for eating disorders. And it was this, they marketed it as a home for troubled women, young women. And so I got sent there. I was supposed to be a 6-month program. And about a month in, I had, well, when I first got there, they told me that I had demons of lust attached to me because I had been sexually abused as a child, and that's why men just couldn't control themselves around me. It was because I had these demons, obviously.
Yeah.
And so a month in, I got into this disagreement with another resident there. I told this joke that did not land well. And one of the house managers had said, you know, you brought a spirit of dissension into the house on top of, you know, these other demonic presences that you have around you. And she tried to like cast the demon out of the house. She started like speaking in tongues and did this prayer walk and was like doing the holy water and all of that. And it really startled me. I ended up leaving the next day. I was like, this is cuckoo. I don't believe that I have spirits attached.
Rightfully so. That's scary. Okay.
Yeah. So I went back to this cult and they ended up like kicking me out. They told me, you know, you didn't uphold your word. You left this treatment center. You were supposed to be there for 6 months and you left. And so I was like, wait a second. Did you not hear what I just told you? They told me that I had demons of lust attached to me, and that's why I left. And anyway, okay, bye if that's what you want to do. So I left and I went back to my hometown in Nevada, and I spent a couple of years like just trying to heal and process. I was still involved in the church, but I think when I turned 23, no, I was just turning 24. I finally decided to leave the fundamentalist church and got my first boyfriend, the person I lost my virginity to. And he turned out to be a sex offender.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was, I want to say that I was shocked, but at this time I was like fully like really believed that I had demons of lust attached to me. So I was like, of course, my first boyfriend's going to be a sex offender. And at that time, I don't know, it was challenging because I loved him. But I ended up leaving him. He got arrested for sexually assaulting patients at our work. We worked at the same place. And it had been going on for years before we had even started dating. And there had been many accusations. I would later find out there had been many accusations that had come up and they had been dismissed by medical directors. And he would just go on and find a new job, and it would start this cycle over and over again. And so after he was arrested, I was really frustrated because the legal response to his arrest, he basically got a slap on the wrist. He wasn't charged with any sexual crimes. He didn't have to register as a sex offender, nothing like that. In fact, he got to go on and continue doing the same exact job in which he had already taken advantage of multiple women. And these women were vulnerable. He wasn't choosing women like you or I. He was choosing the elderly who were on oxygen tanks and couldn't even walk, or people who were addicted to substances and were not believed by medical directors. It was very
Oh my gosh.
sick. Yeah, it was hard to be confronted with that information, but mostly I just felt for these women. So once I learned that, I started contacting his employers. We had by then broken up, but I was reaching out to each employer that he would get, and I would send them transcripts of the court and saying, this is who you're employing, and he did these things in the course of his job. And so he got fired from several places of employment, and at that time he was still I guess I would describe it as it was kind of like stalker behavior. He was not accepting that we had broken up. He was sending me flowers multiple times a day.
Oh my God.
He was showing up at my house, leaving gifts and letters. I think once he realized that it was me who was getting him fired from his jobs, he started getting upset and angry with me and started like breaking into my house. He started showing up at my work and trying to confront me at work. And I ended up having to sell my house and move to a different state, which was hard, but also very exciting at the time. I think it was 26 when I moved.
Okay.
And wouldn't you know it, but I want to say it was like within the first 3 months of me being there, I ended up being sexually assaulted, and I blamed myself for it. I was like, of course this is happening to me. I have demons of lust attached to me.
Right.
This is my fault. I don't know how to get these demons off of me. Even though I'd left the church, like I was still carrying this story with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this is kind of where the actual story begins. So the person who sexually assaulted me, he was dating my roommate's. He was a roommate of my roommate.
Okay.
Roommate's boyfriend. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
My roommate and her boyfriend's roommate.
Okay.
So it was this guy. We went out, we were dancing, we were drinking, we were having a great time, we were making out. It was very like consensual up until the time we got back to my apartment. I was not feeling well. I was not a drinker at all and was feeling very sick. So I excused myself. I went to my room, and I just remember like hearing a little knock on the door. And this guy had come into my room, and he said, "Jess, are you okay?" I couldn't even speak. I was so inebriated and so feeling sick. I just remember just feeling nauseous. I think I may have like groaned or something when he asked how I was doing, and he still came in. He came into my room, and I remember him coming to the side of my bed and like feeling the mattress shifting as he like rested against the edge of it. And the next thing I remember hearing him taking off his belt, like the clinking sound of his belt, and then feeling the shift in the mattress as he like climbed to get on top of me. And the next thing I remember was my roommate. She didn't knock, but she opened the door and she said, "Jess, are you okay?" And I couldn't speak. At this point, I had entered like a freeze trauma response state of like this is happening to me, but I did everything right. Like right. There's
Right.
no actual right thing for people who are being sexually assaulted, but I had done what I could to protect myself. I knew that I was under the influence. I excused myself, and this was still happening to me. So I was completely like shut down and freeze. So I remember hearing my roommate ask if I was okay, if I needed anything. I didn't say anything. And then my roommate started calling his name and telling him, "You need to come out. What are you doing?" She could see him on top of me.
Right.
And he didn't get off. And so her boyfriend, his roommate, he then came into my room and was trying to coax him to come off of me. He would not. And so this guy had to like grab him and pull him off of my body.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was. I remember like hearing him in the living room saying, he was screaming things like, "If you don't let me fuck her, this entire night will have been a waste." And things like that. But that just made me, I started like sobbing at that point when I heard that. I just felt like, all I was to him was a body and sex, and that it meant more to me.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, my roommate came into my room at that time, and she asked like if I was okay, and I was just crying. I couldn't even speak. I was just sobbing, you know. And he ended up like sleeping it off on the couch. I went out the next morning into the living room, and he was there. It was very jarring to see him. Both of us like were feeling embarrassed, I think, but I also was like, I don't have anything to be embarrassed for, but I did still feel embarrassed. And I ended up staying in LA. That's where I had moved to, was LA. This is where that happened. I stayed there for a few years and started going to trauma therapy twice a week. Talked a lot about demons and all of that. At this time, I was also having, I started having sleep paralysis nightmares that were demon related. I would see like demonic figures in my bedroom as I was sleeping, and was unable to wake myself. And that was combined with I was having hallucinations that were also sleep related. They're called hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations. They happen when I'm falling asleep or waking up. I've had them since I was 14 or 15, around that age. When I was younger, I would see, like, I would open my eyes and see that a lamp was on, and I would reach to turn it off and realize, oh, there's nothing there. Or I would wake up and see like a spider web in front of my face and would reach to like push it down, but there was nothing there. So those were like the hallucinations at that time. But as I got older and all of this stuff started happening, they started becoming more demonic. I would see like demon faces in front of me. So I'd wake up and just be very startled, very alarmed, and was really having a hard time undoing this like sexual trauma from this story that I had demons of lust attached to me.
Yeah.
When I finally decided to leave LA and just like start fresh and start new, the night before I left, someone had ended up spiking my drink and sexually assaulting me again. It was probably one of the most violent sexual assaults that I had experienced. He was suffocating me, and I was trying to like scream and cry out for help. I really thought that he was going to kill me, and he ended up letting me leave at the end of the assault, and I was so out of it, I couldn't even get dressed. I remember like wrapping my dress around me as he called me an Uber, and he said, "You can't leave like that. We have to get you dressed." And I couldn't even dress myself. He had to put my dress back on me and got me into the Uber. And I was like, of course. Yeah, I was like, well, of course this is happening. I have demons attached to me. And I really just could not. I really like felt to blame for everything that was happening to me, even though I know now none of that is true.
Right.
A few years later, I started working at a domestic and sexual violence nonprofit. A lot of that had to do with these stories that had happened to me, and also my first boyfriend sexually assaulting women and me feeling powerless. Like, even though did I talk about that I had like reached out to the DA and all of that?
No, you hadn't.
Okay. Well, I'll get to that. Just remind me if I don't touch on that. But anyway, yeah, I started working in this field of domestic and sexual violence, and it was really hard. It was hard to be confronted every day with the same traumas that I had gone through and trying to heal my own stuff while also helping others like walk through their own traumatic experiences. There's this term that we refer to as vicarious trauma, which is when we observe someone else's traumatic experience and we put ourselves in their shoes, we start to take on their trauma as our own. That's known as vicarious trauma, and it lives in our body as if it was our own. We can get PTSD from it. All of the same symptoms that come with trauma, we take on as our own. And so I was constantly on top of my own trauma, experiencing vicarious trauma. I think what's really beautiful about vicarious trauma is that we do create those spaces for people to feel seen and heard, and we recognize that we have people who do see us and believe us and are standing beside us. And so also witnessing survivors experiencing healing from us being able to sit with them and validate their experience. That's known as vicarious resilience. When we see them taking steps to overcome their trauma, it's healing for us as well. And anyway, so as I'm working in this field, I was working with a client who she had decided to make a report to law enforcement about a sexual assault that had happened to her years before. And so she had no evidence. She had never gone for a sexual assault exam, none of that.
Right.
And just hearing her story and knowing that I was coming up on the statute of limitations for this assault that happened in LA, not the violent one, but the roommate one. I was going through my own internal monologue of, should I say something? Like, should I report? Because I feel like I want some sort of justice or acknowledgement of harm. And I ultimately decided I'm going to make a social media post. I'm going to post on TikTok what happened. I'm going to tag him in it. And so I did that.
Oh boy.
And this was in, I think, September 2022. So I posted it. I shared all of the things that I have shared with you, basically, like hearing the belt buckle, knowing that I had excused myself. And his response to my video was to block me, which frustrated me. I was
yeah.
That's not okay. I don't agree with that. So I did what any survivor would do. I sent the video to his mother on Instagram. And then I messaged him on Instagram and I said, hey, I sent this to your mom. All I wanted from you was an acknowledgement. He blocks me on Instagram as well. I just remember feeling so frustrated, but also like, well, at least I know he saw it. At least I know that maybe he hasn't thought about me at all over these past 10 years, unlike me, who like I'm doing my job, my career because of him. I think about him every day. And so he blocked me and I was like, okay, you know what? I've done everything that I can to like get some sort of acknowledgement from him. I feel okay.
Did his mom ever reply back to you?
No, never. I don't even know if she saw the message. You know, it goes to like a secret folder if you're not friends with the person. I think that's what happened. I I know.
That's so annoying.
Yeah. A few months later, though, in January of 2023, so September, October, November, December, 4 months later, I got served with paperwork saying that he was planning to sue me for making this video, which was still up. And I have his little thing right here that he served me with. But he was suing me for defamation, for invasion of privacy, and they call it false light, which is like they say you're making up stories in public about somebody, which is bringing attention to them. And he also sued me for intentional infliction of emotional distress, which I was like, what you did to me was actually distressing. I'm sorry that the repercussions of your actions have been so distressing to you. I remember
that is so infuriating.
I know. At first I was really angry. I was like, how dare you? And then I was really scared. I was crying a lot, and I was just like, what am I going to do? I cannot afford to be sued. I'm working at this nonprofit. I'm barely making enough money to survive. And so I just started reaching out to all of these attorneys and explaining what happened and hoping that someone would feel some sort of like need to step in or like have mercy on me.
Right.
And this one attorney finally did respond to me. It was about a month later. He had said, I believe you. I think it's really brave what you're trying to do. I love that you're trying to share your story. I'm going to take on your case pro bono. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. And so I kind of walked him through everything that had happened that I could remember, each of the steps, all of the people that were involved, and asked what I should do. And he suggested reaching out to the witnesses, first of all, and seeing if they would be willing to speak on my behalf or if they remembered even what happened. So I sent messages. There was, the two people, my roommate and her boyfriend, reached out to them at that time. And then I made sure to tell this attorney, like, I have no intention of countersuing. To me, that's not justice. I just wanted him to know what he did to me, and I wanted him to hear it, and I wanted him to say, yes, I did this thing. I didn't even want an apology. I'd already done the work to heal over the past 10 years. Like, I've been in trauma therapy twice a week, paid for it myself, gone to support groups. Like, I've done all of this work. I don't need an apology. I just need an acknowledgement that it happened. And when I think about survivors who try to go through the legal justice system and they make reports, I think the current statistic is out of 1,000 sexual assaults or 1,000 rapes, less than 25 of those rapists will be convicted and sent to prison. So
that would even include your first boyfriend, because the way that you had said it, no one who he assaulted got justice, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And there were at least 4 women that I knew of. Yeah. It's really heartbreaking. Sorry, I lost my place.
Sorry, I know. So sometimes I'm like, oh, I hate asking questions, especially if you're in the groove.
No, I'd already lost my place before you asked me. Okay, so I had told the attorney that I didn't want to sue, and never heard back from the attorney ever. I kept messaging him saying, hey, this is what's happening. Hey, his attorney keeps reaching out to me. Hey, she's now calling me at work. It had been several months at this point. She was trying to reach out to me, this guy's attorney. And I had told her, I have an attorney. If you want to sue me, go ahead. Their demands were that I take down the video. I sign a statement saying that I had lied about the whole thing, and that I agree to mediation in person. And split half of the legal fees for both of us. And I didn't want to do any of that. So I said, if you're going to sue me, you can go ahead. I'm not going to sign anything saying that I lied, and I'm not going to take down the video. I have legal representation, even though he was not responding to me. I was terrified to say that. But his attorney responded to me, and she said, I haven't filed the paperwork yet, so I'm hoping we can resolve this amicably. And will you have a phone call with me? And so I said, okay, sure. Let's have a conversation. She asked what I would need in order to take down the video. She told me that he was terrified that his family was going to find this video that I had made. She said, he has never had any other claim like this. And he has nieces and nephews. He has a fiance, and he's very scared that they're going to hear the story.
Right.
And he doesn't agree that this happened. And I said, I get that he doesn't agree. And in his statement, he's saying this all happened on a date that I didn't even live in Los Angeles. Like, he does not have his facts correct.
Right.
So even though it's hard for him to acknowledge that he did this, I remember very clearly everything that happened.
Right.
And again, I had reached out to the witnesses. None of them had responded yet at this point. So I think it was June or July. So it had been it must have been June. It had been 6 months since she'd originally reached out, and we were just now having our first conversation about what would happen. And so I said to her, I understand that he has a different recollection of what happened that evening, and that we're not going to agree. And so if he would agree to write me a letter stating that he understands what sexual assault is and the ways that he's committed to ending sexual assault, I will agree to take down the video. I'm not going to sign anything saying that I lied, but I'll take down the video. And she said, okay, I agree. Let's do that. I'll draft up the paperwork and get that over to you. I said, okay. Get off the call, and I was just flooded with all of these feelings of, why did I agree to do something that my needs aren't getting met? All I wanted was for him to say that he had done it. I'm not threatening legal action. I'm not threatening to sue him. I'm literally asking for the bare minimum from him. And wouldn't you know it, but that same weekend, my roommate saw my message finally. We had not been friends on social media or anything, so my message had gone to the secret folder. But she finally saw my message, and she responded to me. And she said, thank you for reaching out. I'm happy to share what I remember so I can support you in this process. I might not remember every detail, but I do know that what happened to you was sexual assault. And I just felt so much relief. It was I knew what happened because I was there, but to be constantly gaslit or told, no, that didn't happen. It was such a relief to me to know that someone else was willing to say, no, that did happen. I'm with you. I'll stand behind you. I will go to court with you. If that's what you want to do, I support you. I believe you. It was so powerful to me. And when I think about most survivors who go through the legal system, I think this is what I was going to say before I lost track. They're saying, this is what happened to me. The person who sexually assaulted them, their attorney is telling them, it doesn't matter if you did it. You have to say that you didn't. We're going to deny this to the very end. And so even as survivors are reading their impact statements in front of the court, if there's a conviction, they're reading their statement to someone who's basically saying this didn't happen, and is denying it, and is going to deny it to the end of their life, because there's so much stigma around sexual harms. And there's such a difference between being able to share your thoughts and feelings and your experience and the impact of that experience with someone who's saying, I'm so sorry that I did that, versus I didn't do that. Sorry, don't care.
Right.
Like that's not healing for survivors. And so
It's almost like they're gaslighting you in the sense you're like, no, you're making that all up, and it makes you feel like you're crazy, and you're like, no, like, I know this happened, just admit that you did this.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And especially in this instance where I was like, I'm not trying to punish you.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to harm you. I just want you to acknowledge it. Like, I don't think you're a horrible person. I'm not judging you based on one decision that you made. That it has impacted me. It changed the entire trajectory of my life,
Right.
but for good. And like, all I need from you is an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's so interesting. That's why I love what I do now, which I can share a little bit about that later. But anyway, so once I heard back from this witness, I did not message his attorney. She kept reaching out to me. And I finally responded to her and I said, I might have it here. I had said to her, here it is. After giving it a lot of thought, I don't have any desire to move forward with our original agreement. What I've been asking for from all of this is accountability, and a letter that doesn't acknowledge that he did in fact sexually assault me isn't a letter I want to read. I'm sorry you feel that way isn't sufficient for me. If he feels the need to proceed with civil legal action, that's his prerogative, but he should be aware that I have proof that his statements are false and that I have witnesses from that evening who are willing to speak out about what they saw and heard, how they intervened, and how that night impacted me. If he would like to settle this through mediation, I'm not interested in that process. I have contacted a restorative justice program that has offered to facilitate a dialogue between us, and he can read more about restorative justice here. If you would like to move forward with legal action, let me know. I'll connect you with my attorney. And his attorney responded, and she said that she was surprised that I was walking away from our settlement talks. And she said that he was willing to go forward with restorative justice, which for anyone who's listening, who's not aware of what that is, when we think about justice, we always think about legal justice. And when the legal system is looking at a harm, they see it as a crime. And so they're looking at what law was broken and who needs to be punished. Whereas what restorative justice asks is, what happened, who was impacted by it, and what needs to be done in order to make this right. So it's very much centered around the person who was harmed and what their needs are. And those needs vary, right? Like, I'm always amazed when I work with sexual assault survivors, when I ask, like, what feels important to you in this moment? Or what do you need to see happen? I've never had anyone say, I need to see him locked up. I need to see him in prison. It's usually, I want to know that this isn't going to affect me for the rest of my life. I need him to know that he hurt me. I need to be able to help other people who've gone through this in the future. Or like, I want to know that he's not doing this again in the future. And restorative justice addresses all of those things. The recidivism rate for people who are imprisoned for a crime, meaning they are let out of prison and then they go back to a life of crime, is astronomical. Whereas people who go through a restorative justice process, the rates of them going back and returning to those crimes is very minimal compared to those who are imprisoned.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and restorative justice, a lot of people think it's like soft on crime because there's not like a punishment aspect. Like, we're not putting people in prison, we're not ripping them away from their communities. We will spend anywhere from a month to a year or more, however long is needed, working with each party separately to get them prepared to engage in a dialogue process where the person who caused harm is ready to acknowledge that harm, to ask how their behavior impacted the person who was hurt, and that person will get to share, this is how it changed my life, this is how you hurt me, and gets to share with someone who's ready and willing to listen and wants to make it right. And both parties get to come together and say, what can I do to make this better? Whether that's that person doing community service or paying for therapy for the survivor, whatever it is that's going to make things right, that's what we are moving toward, because we're focused on healing and making things right.
That is amazing. I'm honestly, that would be something that I would be interested in looking into myself, because I've never heard of that ever.
Yeah,
and I think that's just amazing. And I think that's so helpful.
Oh, thank you, Alex. Yeah, it's changed my life. I didn't share this earlier, but I have gone through a restorative justice process with another partner who had sexually assaulted me, and it was very healing. It was a beautiful process. Okay, so he agreed to do the restorative justice process, which felt good to me. It felt right. And I had a very difficult time finding a restorative justice organization in California that would take our case. Most restorative justice organizations work with like a district attorney's office or the legal system. So most of the cases that they're getting are diverted from the court, meaning the court recognizes this person has caused harm or committed a crime, and now they're going to enter this dialogue process instead of prison. What I love about my organization, Conflict Artistry, is that we don't work with the legal system at all. All of our cases are initiated by people who've experienced harm or by community partner organizations. So I'll get referrals from domestic and sexual violence agencies, or that's what I specialize in, is intimate partner harms. So,
okay.
And I love that, because I think that a lot of harm is actually caused by the legal system, and that's not what most survivors are actually looking for. Like, they want to know that they're safe. They want to know that this person isn't going to do it again. So I had a really hard time finding someone in California that would take the case. When we finally found someone, they had reached out to him, and I learned that he was still not ready to take responsibility. He was not willing to be accountable for the harm that he caused, which again, like, that was all I wanted. And so I met with this restorative justice organization a few times. We talked about like what I was needing from the process, how they could support me through this, what my needs were, what would happen if we got to the end of this process and he was not willing to say that he had done it. And through those conversations, I was also going through so much of my own personal life around my work, and just recognizing, what would my life look like if I wasn't constantly confronted with my own trauma? Like, what could I accomplish in life if I was not having to perpetually have to keep healing these traumas that I have already worked through, but that get reactivated in the work that I'm doing? And I recognized that the reason that I was wanting to go through this process was just to appease him. Like, he was wanting me to take the video down, and he was going to sue me in order to get that done. I didn't want to be sued.
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't want to take the video down. And so like this was where we met in the middle. Yet he was not willing to take responsibility for that harm. And so after my first few conversations with this restorative justice organization, I realized I don't have to keep setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. I don't have to keep doing this work. I don't have to keep trying to like get him to be accountable if he's not going to. If his fear is that I'm going to like make a video in the future and name him and his family's going to find it and he's going to feel shame, that's his choice, because I've done everything that I can to get him to a place of accountability without shaming him, without punishing him. Literally all I needed from him was him to say, I did this. I do remember it that way. And I'd done everything that I could to like mitigate any shame that he might feel so that he could take accountability. And the fact that he still wasn't willing to made me recognize, okay, I've done the work and I feel good about what I've done. I ended up deleting the video, but I stopped engaging with this restorative justice organization. I never reached back out to his attorney. I just stepped back and felt very empowered. Like when we talk about sexual assault or other types of harm, all of that is around consent violations and having our choice taken away. And so for me, even though I didn't end up like going through the whole restorative justice process with him, I still felt like I got everything that I needed because I felt empowered, because I could make my own choices, because I knew exactly what I wanted and what I needed to heal. And if he wasn't willing to meet me there, I was okay with that. And so he does live in fear now that I'm going to continue to name him. I still talk about this experience on my socials all the time. I'm still trying to heal from the fact that the person who already harmed me was trying to harm me again just for simply speaking about it. Yeah.
Kind of like already like kicking you when you're already down, like you're already down here, and then it's like, oh, you know, the fact of not taking responsibility for it or just like acknowledging it. And yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I there's certain things that you say that I'm like, oh, I kind of want to pop in, but at the same time,
oh, please, yeah.
No, you're fine.
What were you gonna ask?
I'm like, and honestly, I don't remember because I'm like, oh yeah, no. So I know you had talked about like your sleep paralysis and stuff like that. And this might just be like an overall general, but I've experienced that myself in the sense of like, there's times, I guess I still have like night terrors of my stuff. With mine, it's caused me to like, even like with regular intimacy with my partner, with something I'm like, I'm feeling really off today. Just don't, like, I feel like we always have really good communication, but I feel like sometimes like I have to really communicate. Like there's just certain things like we could like be in the moment and he'll touch me the wrong way and I'm like, I'm done. And I don't know if that's necessarily like a common thing that people experience, because it felt like once I started talking about my trauma again, because for the longest time I was very, very like kept into myself. I guess in all honesty, I didn't fully start speaking up about my trauma until the person who sexually assaulted me passed away. And when he did, it was like a sense of relief, just kind of like I don't have to be scared anymore, because he also was stalking me. He was also, you know, doing things where I felt like I always had to constantly look over my shoulder, because he was a bad man. He was a big drug runner in our area. He was in prison, but had gotten out of prison early, which I have no idea how he got out of prison. Obviously, he had some other stuff that happened, but I felt like I could not fully speak up because of retaliation. Because I was like, if I were to say anything, I know this man will kill me. Yeah. I know he would. So I felt for the longest time like I couldn't, and I finally spoke up, and I felt a relief. But then it started to build up with so many other problems. I finally started speaking about my truth, and the person I thought I was keeping the secret from for so long, my own mother. And I was like, this happened. And she's like, what a story. Completely invalidating me. And I was like, I'm done. And I officially went no contact with my mom, because that was like the lowest thing she could have said it to me at that point. And from there, I have not spoke to my mom in 4 years. And I'm simply just waiting for like an apology.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for like, I hear what you say. I truly believe what you said. Yes, I believe you. And honestly, that would fix so many of our problems. And it's kind of like snowballed from there, where I started speaking up, and then I started doing the podcast, and the people in my life, they thought it was just attention seeking. When I was sharing, I was like, no, it's not attention seeking. It's I'm advocating for not only myself, but other people to speak out. That I have kept this all inside my entire life. And now that this person that I know is gone, who can't hurt me, I finally feel like I can speak my truth.
Yeah.
But from there, it's kind of snowballed and snowballed and snowballed to the point where I don't have a family. Where I have family, but like I can't go to family get-togethers anymore. I can't, people don't want to speak to me because what if she says that on her podcast? Not something I would do, but still, I've had people isolate me from certain things because they're scared that I'm going to speak out on it, or like, and then just to add on top of it, all the political stuff on top of that, I feel like the last couple of years, it's been like, cut off this person, cut off this person. I'm trying to save my own self personally, but I feel like it was relieving, but it was also such hard work of finally speaking up. And it's like, sometimes I think, should I have never spoke up? Would have I still had a relationship with my mother, or still have a relationship with my family? But at the same time, I know me personally, and I still would not have felt like myself. I know, speaking to my boss a couple weeks ago, I had like my yearly review because I'd been with the company for over 5 years, and she was like, I can see a night and day difference from you. Because when I first started off, I was really shy, really kept to myself. Now I'm very much like outgoing, and I could speak more because I don't feel that shame, or I don't feel that, I have to hide. I'm very much like, I want to share my story. I want you to share your story. Let's have a conversation. Talk about this. But I feel like some of the things that you were saying, I was like, yes, I resonate with that. Like, I understand that. But I feel it's kind of like a lot of good came from this, but I'm still dealing with a lot of bad at the same time. Because before I started sharing, I didn't have the night terrors. I didn't have the sleep paralysis. And now that's something that I do deal with quite often. And I feel like it's also very triggering with other things in my life, just my everyday life. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and finally getting the mental health help that I've needed all my life, but finally able to admit that, like, yes, I need to get this stuff under wraps. But I feel like, I don't know if there's just so much in my life that it's made my anxiety 10 times worse. Plus COVID on top of that, and like people who were locked in their houses for years, that now, like, I considered myself at one point a big people person, in the sense of like, my social battery is like, I can go out and about. I want to talk to people. I want to do this. No, I'm like, no, I'm very much, I want to talk to people on my own terms. I don't want to leave my house. I'm a homebody.
Yes. I'm curious, like, if you, knowing that sharing your truth has like disrupted your family, like, do you have any regrets about sharing what you did with your mom, or what's your feeling on that now?
I don't regret it, because I felt like for such a long time I was like, my mom can't find out about this.
Mm.
I've always been my mom's secret keeper because I also deal with a lot of like eldest child syndrome. You know what I mean? So like I'm constantly like, oh my mom is a bit of a narcissist too. So I always felt like I was stepping on eggshells around her and like I can't let any of this out. Or like we also dealt with the same person. It was her ex-husband. She was in a domestic violence situation and I witnessed a lot of that. I was also thrown into a lot of that. And I remember having conversations with my mom when I was little. There was one time I got in the middle of it and I was shoved and I was pushed into a table and I had gotten some kind of bruise on my face. And I remember my mom telling me, like, tell them you ran into a door. So, like, I felt like I had all this, like, built up. So I was like, I don't want to put another thing on my mom's place. I don't want to tell her this has happened because I know this will just make it even worse for her. This is another thing I got to keep off my mom's plate. She's already dealing with so much. So even at like 4 years old, I realized I can't tell my mom this.
You have to protect her from it.
Yes, I have to protect her from it. And so finally, when I told her, because I had told her in the past, I was like, this person, he was stalking me at work. Like they had been long divorced since then. And there was times where he would come in where I worked and my boss knew. Like the first time he came in, I went into the stock room and I explained to her what happened. She just happened to be in there. And she was like, if he ever comes in here, you have my full permission to hop off the register or do whatever you're doing and go into the back room or anywhere else so you don't have to interact with him. And so she was very, very understanding. But it was just like an overall occurrence. Like there was no reason for him to come into my work.
Yeah.
And we hadn't been in each other's lives for years. But when I found out that he passed, I think I told my mom that he was stalking me and stuff like that. She was like, oh, wow. I don't know why he would do that. And it wasn't until a couple weeks later, no, it was even like probably like a week later, my mom had asked me, because they were having the funeral, and she was like, are you going to the funeral? And I was like, no, definitely not. I don't want anything to do with that man. And she was like, but you're supposed to be there for your sisters and blah, blah, blah. I was like, that man wasn't even a father to my sisters. Like, he up and bounced. I was like, I have no passion for that man. I want nothing to do with him. And she called me selfish. And I was like, you know what? And I finally admitted to her in a text message. I wrote it. I couldn't even bear myself to call her and talk to her about it. I like wrote in a text message and I said everything. I was like, it happened at this house. This is what happened. And I was like, you even walked in when it was happening. And her response to me was, what a story. And I was just kind of like, I'm done. And I immediately was like, all right, I'm done. Have a good life. I do not want to talk to you anymore. And I immediately like blocked and deleted her. And I remember having a conversation with my husband and I was just bawling because he was the only person. I had lost my virginity to my husband. He was the only person I had really been intimate with. And he knew how bad I struggled. And he knew how bad I wanted, like how much I kept that secret from her. And the fact that he could see that was paining. He's like, I don't want you speaking to your mom. I was like, I've already made that decision for myself. Not that you can dictate if I do or not, but like, I've already made that decision. And he was like, I will fully support you. But then like from there, it was kind of like family kind of like dropped like flies. Like my sisters then went off on me and they're like, we don't want anything to do with you. Like my other half of my family. And then it would come to the fact of like family get-togethers, weddings and stuff. I'd be like, hey, I see you invited me to this wedding. I'm super excited. Do you know if my mom's going to be there? Because my mom is the kind of person, if I go into a place, she's going to try to talk to me. And I was like, I'm not going to ruin someone else's day. That's not the kind of person I am. And it was to the point where like, oh, well, we did invite her too. And I was like, okay, well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go. So it's almost like I had to like personally exile myself from my own family. So now it's in the sense that like people will just forget about me. My grandpa passed away a couple weeks ago and no one bothered to tell me he was sick. because the way our family worked was very much my grandpa would tell his children, and then his children or their children. So like my mom and my uncles would then tell their children, just kind of as like a family tree, family
Yeah.
call line. I'm completely left out.
Oh, Alex. How
And
isolating.
a lot of people don't understand. I had a conversation with my cousin about it, and I was like, I'm no contact. He's like, it's okay. You can go sit in a corner. You don't have to interact with your mom. It was like, you obviously don't know my mother if you think me sitting in a corner at a family event would solve anything. That would not be the case at all.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, some days I do regret that conversation, but I know as a person, I have learned so much more about myself and how more resilient I am. And, you know, I'm showing my children too that your family can't be bullies to you, because I felt like that was almost the way too. Like there was other things my mom and I dealt with, and I feel like my eldest gets it. For a long time, it was really hard because my children. So my daughter Lena, she was like 3 when we lost contact, so she doesn't know my mom. She knows her as the lady with a lot of cats. But that's all that she really knows. And then Bella, my eldest, she knows. I mean, she grew up with my mom. So for a long time, it was really hard until she was old enough. And I finally told her about what happened. And she was like, that is ridiculous that your mom wouldn't believe you. And I was like, I'm happy that you understand that. Because I was like, if anything ever happened like that with you, I want you to know that I would trust you 100%. I back you no matter what. Like, I guess what really kind of puts the cherry on top of it, though, is one of my other sisters was molested at a daycare center. And the fact that I knew my mom went to bat for that sister, but then when it came to me, it didn't. I was like, what? Why not me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Alex.
Yeah. So I know a lot of the stuff that you're saying like kind of resonated. So I was like, I kind of feel like I need to like speak my stuff. Obviously things are different. You were an adult when everything kind of happened to you, or you were younger too. And with you, it felt like when you were sharing, it was like one thing after another. And I was like, when are you ever going to get a break? Oh my goodness.
No, and I so appreciate everything that you've shared, and it breaks my heart. I want you to know I believe you, and I'm really grateful that you shared. And it's so heartbreaking that you have no reason to lie about that, and the fact that your mom also like supported and believed one of your siblings but not you. Like, I can't imagine like what a betrayal that felt like. And even as you're speaking, like, I was disowned by my dad for something completely different, but I had told him about my childhood sexual assault, and he did believe me and supported me through it. But he later went on to basically disown me, and I've been disinvited from family funerals and not being told about things happening in the family, and not being asked to dance at like family weddings for the father-daughter dance. Like, lots of things that are very painful and raw. And so as you're speaking, like, it's bringing up a lot for me as well. And I just want you to know that I'm with you, and I hear you, and I support you. And I'm so
to me.
I'm so glad that you like created this space. Is so beautiful for people to be able to share. And I just love your vulnerability and your wanting to like talk about these things.
Well, because my whole thing too is there's no point of being silent about it. You're just kind of doing a cycle. You know what I mean? It's very much in the sense of like in the past episode we just talked about like generational trauma. And people might know things, but that's very much like, let's keep it in the family, very shh. But who is that helping? That's not helping anyone. No one is getting the justice or respect that they deserve. You know, just keeping it quiet, or even just having like family members like, oh, Sally, you need to make sure you're wearing pants when you're around Uncle Joe. Like, no, like I don't want that to be a thing anymore. Like, I want people to speak out about that and be like, no, if there's a problem with someone, I'm very passionate about it, and that's one reason I was like, I wanted to make sure that there was a space for people to share. But it's like a two-sided coin for me. It's like I feel so relieved, but at the same time, there's still so much pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like trying to balance that.
Yeah.
Do you feel that with your line of work as well? That like you feel relieved with your own, but sometimes it can kind of put you back in that space?
Absolutely. It feels like such a balance because in my last job, I had like surveyed people who experienced sexual assault and asked, what were your experiences with, getting support after? How long after was it that you told somebody else? Did you go for a sexual assault exam? Did you make a police report? And I think it was like 84% of folks said that they did not get support after. And the reason for that was because of stigma. Like they felt they had this mark of shame or this black sheep quality about them that made them different. And there's 3 types of stigma. There's the stigma that we place on ourselves, like our own internal beliefs about what happened to us. There's the stigma of how we were raised in our communities or culture. Like, this is what our society says about this very thing that we experienced. And there's anticipated stigma, like what we expect how people are going to respond to us when we're sharing. And so all of that like creates this culture of silence where we feel shame about something that happened to us that we didn't ask for. But then when we do share about it, we still may experience stigma, or people may invalidate us, or people may also, for me, like I always feel like people may be thinking, should you be doing this work if you have gone through this? Like, are you healed enough to be doing this? And just because I'm maybe having a hard time, or if I'm having an emotional day, that doesn't mean that I'm not resilient. It doesn't mean I am not a survivor. It doesn't mean that I can't support someone else who's going through this. My vulnerability is my strength. My emotions and the way that I process things, those are like the most fucking beautiful things about me. I love who I am and have like grown to embrace all of the things that have happened to me because they have made me better. I don't think anyone is like responsible for the trauma that they experience. And like with certain things we can look at, well, what was the role that I was playing that like contributed to my suffering? So for me, I keep choosing people in my life that are not going to be able to give back emotionally the same way that I do. I need to caretake for them. And that ends up hurting me in the long run. Like, this has nothing to do with sexual harm at all. Like, no one who's experienced sexual harm ever deserved any of that. However, like, in taking some responsibility for things that I continue to do to this day that are harming me, those things are empowering for me. It's empowering for me to look at the role that I've played and the ways that I can change and grow. But those weaknesses or the things that like took away from me, or the traumas that I experienced, like those are still my strengths. Like those, I don't regret them. I'm not mad that they happened anymore. Forgiveness is letting go of the idea the past could be any different. It was always meant to happen, and it has put me where I am today. And I'm so fucking grateful. I'm doing exactly what I was meant to do. I'm also like breaking generations of trauma.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. No, I feel the exact same way. Every time you're like, as you're talking, it was like, yes, I feel the same. I feel the same.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. You are such a delight.
I'm so happy to be able to meet you and work with you on this. This was a very eye-opening episode, and I hope sharing our stories helps someone else want to speak up and talk about theirs, or even just get the help that they're wanting to. because like what you were talking about before, I'm so bad with things. Oh my gosh, what was
Stigma?
it that? What was it?
Was it stigma?
No, what you do.
Oh, restorative justice.
Yes, I'd never known anything about that. I'm planning on doing more research to see what's available in each state too.
Mm-hmm.
I live in Iowa, so I don't know very much what is if how big that kind of thing is here. So I do want to make sure that there are people who have resources for each state. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably gonna go through and figure out what there is available in each state and kind of post about that later, so people have those opportunities to do that, because that is amazing. That's something I never you taught me something today, and I'm really excited to share it with other people,
Oh,
because I want people to know that is an option too, because I
yeah.
didn't know that was an option.
Yes. Yeah. And our nervous systems love choice. Like the fact that we're told the only way we can get justice is if we make a police report. And we know that that most likely is only going to further traumatize us and not go anywhere.
Yep.
Means that we don't actually have a choice. We don't feel empowered by that. But that's what I love about this work, is that we take it out of the hands of the legal system. Like, you do have options. You have a way to get justice. You can tell this person that what they did impacted you, and you can get accountability. And if you don't, you still have that, like, you can opt out of the process if you realize that you're not getting what you need from it. Yeah, and if I can help in any way, help you find resources to put together for this episode, just let me know. I'm very
I'll totally send you an email to be like, hey, this is what I
pleased.
found.
Yeah, great. I would love that.
Am I missing anything?
Please do.
But all right. Well, thank you again for so much for coming on. I truly appreciate you, and truly appreciate you sharing your story and everything you've been through. Would you like anyone to reach out to you for anything? Do you want to share any of your handles or anything?
Absolutely. So you can reach out to me through my email, which is jess@conflictartistry.org. You can also find me on Instagram at nth degree of healing, which is NTH degree of healing. And I believe that's my TikTok handle as well. So if you have any questions or just want to share your story, like I'm here to bear witness, as well as like help people get connected to resources. I want people to feel seen and heard, and for them to know that there are people out there who believe them and support them and want to help connect them to feelings of safety and healing.
That is amazing.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Okay, well, that will wrap up this episode. If you want to share any of your trauma here on the podcast, you can send me an email at sorryfortraumadumpingpodcast@gmail.com. It is really long, but you won't forget it. You can also find me on TikTok, on Instagram, and on Facebook. All the handles will be linked below. You can also listen to this on Spotify and YouTube. And that will wrap this up. Thank you again. Bye-bye.